and they need to work very hard now to get it back.
Gillian?
Well, I think what Andy hasn't said, actually, which is we are facing an unbelievably serious situation. And if you just put that into context, just less than 2 months ago, we were quarantining holidaymakers coming back from various countries around the world because they had more than 20 cases per 100,000 in those places. Today, in Manchester, I believe it's way over 500 cases per 100,000. It is extremely serious. It's a very, very difficult balance that we have to make, but it's extremely serious. 2/3 of the hospitalisation that has happened, all COVID patients in the whole of the UK, has happened in the North East, the North West and Yorkshire. 2/3 of everybody going into hospital in the country in those places. This is serious. It is getting out of control, and we have to do something to bring it back under control. Now, of course, there's been some local lockdown restrictions, moving to single household. Obviously, the curfew for 10 p.m. has been there for everybody, the rule of 6 across the country. But the cases are still rising. So we do need to, we definitely need to work locally, and we definitely need to make sure that the communications are much clearer. And I do agree with you, Andy, and I think it's probably very frustrating for everybody if leaks are made or the speculation in the press, and I don't know which of those it is. But clearly, we have to do something if we're going to bring those cases back under control. We have one thing that we need to do, which is to try and get that R rate back to below 1. That's the only.
What about support for businesses, for example?
Well, of course, we've done unprecedented support for businesses. The furlough scheme.
No, but from here on in.
Well, we have the furlough scheme is still existing. It's still in place until the end of this month. And we have the winter economic package, which is introduced from the 1st of November, which is for restrictions and restricted times. The Chancellor has looked at some specific industries as well. There's been specific sector deals, specific sector support. We have said that we will support businesses. We have support businesses. There's been grants, there's been VAT
Gillian,
cuts,
there's
been business rate cuts, there's been VAT
closed
deferrals.
Pubs and restaurants in Bolton overnight just a few weeks ago, but the people who work behind the bar in those places or in the kitchen got no support at all. Do you think that is right?
Well, the people would be entitled to furlough.
No, they weren't.
Why were they not?
Because it was closed overnight. It was their jobs were just taken away from them overnight.
Well, their employers could have put them into furlough. That's exactly what that scheme is there for. It is there for, everything was closed overnight. On the 23rd of March, everything was closed overnight. Look at the skies. You won't see hardly any planes flying. You go on a train, there'll be hardly any, well, Michael can tell us, but there'll be hardly anybody
Honestly,
on the
Gillian,
train.
people who work behind bars can't be put easily into a furlough scheme. But I think
they were put into furlough schemes.
The point that you're missing is
all across the country.
We've been under
for that
restrictions,
6 months, they were.
local restrictions, without support, and that's happened all summer. If you're going to introduce a traffic light scheme that will trap large parts of the north of England under severe restrictions this winter, can I ask you, do you think we need a proper support scheme so that we don't see major loss of jobs, major business failure? Would you commit to that tonight? Because if you will, I will work with your government to then put that in place. What we were presented with is restrictions without support, and that is not acceptable to us.
For some reason, Andy, you seem to not have realised that the furlough scheme that we put in place in March, which is still in place today, which we spent £40 billion on, has
but
also
it's closed
applied.
Gillian, as I'm sure you know, in your job, it's closed to new entrants.
Yes, but it's at the end of this month, but it's been there for all the time.
It closed to new entrants. The Bolton staff could not access that scheme.
It closed on the 30th of June.
And the point is, furlough ends on the end of this month. And industries like aviation, for instance, can't come back. So the damage you're going to do to those people who work in regional airports, as combined with the local restrictions, means that fragile economies in the north are going to be
Can I just correct
down.
you? It's the damage that the coronavirus, the global pandemic, is doing. The government has been there to help as many people as we can every step of the way. It is not the government that are doing this. It is the coronavirus. It's the public health epidemic that we are dealing with.
The government are choosing to close bars and restaurants.
Andy, I want to hear from the audience.
That's your choice.
Jack, you asked a question. You had your hand up again.
Public health is an issue.
Jack.
Yeah, in terms of a national lockdown, if it is...
In terms of what we're doing to prepare to better prepare. The thing that we're trying to work on is obviously the vaccine, and we have the two camps, two groups here that seem to be leading the way. But as you say, that will be binary. It will work or it won't at some point. In terms of testing, we've got another two streams. So the first is to have a lot more testing, so 500,000 tests per day by the end of this month, and the moonshot, which is millions a day in the early next year. And that really relies on the pilots that we're doing now with the rapid testing, the saliva testing. There's a number of different pilots going on. That, if you can get to those kinds of tests, it does give you some options.
So the strategy then is either for a vaccine to kind of come to the rescue, or to have so much testing, in fact, that we don't have to go into serious restrictions one after the other.
To live with it in a way that you can use testing effectively. So, for example, for venues, you could use a test, you could have a rapid turnaround, you could tell if somebody was negative, they could go into the venue.
And can I just ask you about
that we're working on those in parallel.
And let me just ask you about the vaccine, because there are reports this week that when a vaccine does come along, if and when it comes along, it will only be offered to 50% of the population. Is that right?
I don't know where those reports came from. We will get as much of the vaccine as we can, and we've secured already.
So is that right or not right?
I don't know if that's right, but we will go until we get all of the whole population. That
was the head of the vaccine programme that was saying that, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess they would know.
I suppose they would know. I suppose that's where they're going to start. If you start with a vaccine, I would imagine you will go to as many people who want the vaccine. It's not like the vaccine is going to be sort of depleted and then there's no longer any vaccine. It can be made again. So, I think the question actually is not about the percentage. It's about how long it takes to get enough of the population vaccinated, and also the prioritisation of the vaccination, which I'm sure will include some of the more vulnerable groups that Donna referred to, would be top of the list.
Donna, where do you think the government should be going? I mean, Boris Johnson's talked about, we're going to have a bumpy 6 months ahead. None of us really know what's going to be happening around Christmas and beyond.